today we've got Marc, the co-founder of Adelaide Metrics, who helps brands and agencies measure the quality of the media they're buying and introduce the AU measurement metric. I'll leave it to Marc to explain that in more detail because it's a little bit complicated. But Marc, thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Gareth.
No worries.
So let me give a brief overview of Adelaide and what we do.
Of course.
We get into it. So Adelaide is a media quality measurement company. We use attention metrics and a whole bunch of other data that describes media placements to come up with a rating that's assigned to the media placement that can act as a shared understanding of quality across the entire ecosystem. So we started by helping buyers understand the quality of the media they're buying, optimize towards more efficient sources of high quality placements, and optimize away from sort of more expensive or less valuable placements. We've been doing this for about 6.5 years. About 2 years in, we started to work with the programmatic ecosystem. So our data is available on every DSP and every SSP for curation and targeting. It's inside of custom algorithms inside of DV360. We have pre-bid segments on the trade desk. And then about 1.5 years ago, we started to work more directly with publishers. We built this thing called the AU ecosystem, where we have a number of the largest, most premium publishers on the internet who are starting to sort of merchandise their inventory using our metrics. So they can go out to market and prove that they actually have higher quality inventory out there than the long tail. So it's really exciting to see our metric be adopted as sort of this new type of media quality currency. And that's what we're headed towards.
Amazing. Are you getting people sort of actually using that as their main sort of trading metric rather than potentially the impression? Is that the goal here? Are you starting to see adoption along that way, or?
Well, so we don't think that attention will replace the impression. Rather, we think that it's a quality rating on that impression. Really, we think it's a quality rating on the placement. And so that, when you can understand the quality of a placement before an ad is ever served, you can start to change the market in some really fundamental ways. So I hope that eventually one day that we replace viewability rather than replacing the impression, but that we're also useful in many other areas of the digital ecosystem where viewability doesn't make a ton of sense, like in audio, for example, or in CTV.
Amazing. Just out of interest, I know we're sort of segueing here, but how are you guys measuring attention on audio then? What sort of signals are you guys picking up on? How does that differ to what you're maybe doing on video or standard display or any other formats?
Let's get right into it. How we build the algorithm. So we see the AU as, it's the closest example is it's a credit rating for media quality. So it helps. So it assigns every single placement with a 0 to 100 score that predicts the probability of attention and then the probability of a subsequent outcome. So we use 3 types of data over 4 steps to build the algorithm on each channel. And we have a separate algorithm for each channel, even though it all sort of rolls up to this normalized 0 to 100 score. The first step is eye tracking data. So we've licensed eye tracking data from everybody out there. We're probably one of the most prolific licensors of eye tracking data. I think I just checked with our finance team. We've spent $2 million over the past 2 years acquiring a whole bunch of eye tracking data. That data tells us what are the characteristics of placements on a channel that make them more or less likely to capture attention. And so, for example, like on the web, it's coverage, clutter, position, duration, page velocity, and audibility. On CTV, it's different. It's because they don't have a lot of those same vectors or the same qualities on placements. It's more like what app are you viewing the CTV through? What's the time of day? What's the genre of the content? What's the pod? What's the pod position? Like other things that are predictive of attention. And to your question about audio, in audio, it's what's the app that it's being listened to? What's the time of day? What's the genre of the podcast or the music that's being listened to? Is it host-read or is it stitched? Where in the session is or where in the podcast is the ad pod, and how long is that ad pod, and where is the ad inside of that pod? So there's a lot of different sort of signals, and that's what the eye tracking data tells us. And for audio, we worked with audio researchers that told us what are the important qualities of placements. That's the first step. Then we go out and we gather all of that data about every placement in a channel. So we go out with a web scraper, we have an ad tag, we use the license data from a company called Sincera that was bought by Trade Desk. And the idea is we get as much data as possible about every placement in a channel. Then we process that data through an algorithm, and the weights at this point are just sort of like guesses. We're like, oh, well, we think coverage should be weighted this way and duration should be weighted that way. So we, basically take guesses. But at this point, 6 years in, we're pretty good at making the guesses. Then the final step is to train that algorithm using historical outcome data coming from impressions that are associated with the placements we're trying to rate. And then we just do simple machine learning like reinforcement training. And the idea is that we have this metric that is sort of based in this ground truth of attention data, but has been trained with outcomes. Because the goal of advertising, while it might in the short term might be to capture attention, the real goal is to drive business outcomes. So the way that we've built this metric sort of gives us the best of both worlds. We have a lot of attention data in there, but an advertiser that uses it knows that they can optimize using AU and drive more efficient incremental business outcomes.
Amazing. So that's the AU. I guess we've kind of gone off on a bit of a segue here, but going back to sort of the business, if you haven't covered too much of it there, if there's anything else you wanted to cover on it, if you want to tell us a bit more about the business, more holistically than just the AU, which is obviously your measurement metric that you've introduced to the industry, and obviously what you do within the company.
Yeah. Well, so I'm one of the co-founders. I do a lot of the product stuff, a lot of the marketing stuff, a little bit of sales, and then everything else that rolls downhill and doesn't get done, take out the trash, and I do a little bit of recruiting, and just try to help out wherever I can. So that's my job at the business. We are around 75 people. Most of us are on the East Coast of the US. So we have an office in New York, but people are pretty well spread out. We have 10 folks in London now. So this is probably our fastest growing market. It's super exciting to see the sort of the London market and the UK and EMEA market overall sort of adopt our metric and start to use it to evaluate media quality and trade and do all the things that we've started to see happen in the States.
Very cool. Welcome to the UK. And obviously, when we were discussing the AU there earlier, you sort of probably identified quite a few of the features that make you guys stand out. But was there any more that you wanted to highlight in terms of how you guys stand out in the market?
Yeah, the attention space is like a crowded and fast moving space. There's a lot of different vendors, a lot of people that are offering different solutions. I think that one of the reasons we stand out is that we've been doing this for a really long time. So over a decade ago, we started an ad network called Parsec, where we're selling media on a cost per second. But even before we started Parsec, I think like the attention economy or the attention approach to media quality has been around for a while. We think that it's gone through 4 distinct waves. The first wave of attention metrics was viewability. Viewability is a very bad attention metric, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't an attempt to discriminate between the quality of impressions or placements using somewhat of an attention angle. So that was the first wave. The second wave was what we were doing at Parsec, where we were selling media on a cost per second. It worked really, really well. So we had full screen mobile ad formats. We charged advertisers for how long the ads were on screen. And even though we charged about a penny per second, we were averaging 3.5 seconds per impression. That's a $35 CPM. So on mobile, that was a tough line to toe. And a lot of agencies would say, why am I paying $35 for mobile CPM? It's like, well, it's a full screen ad. You're only paying when people are paying attention. And when they looked at the cost of incremental outcomes, we were more efficient. So it worked as a media buy. We ran into a couple of problems. The biggest one was the optics around the CPM. The other problem, though, was when we started optimizing to maximize the duration of attention on every impression, which was our incentive because we were selling on a cost per second, stuff started to go weird. The audiences started to skew a lot older, and the creative choices we were making started to become not ideal, right? We were picking the creative that was the most interesting and had spinning things and whiz bang stuff, not the creative that was putting the brand front and center. And if you take that all the way down, like, the ads that will capture the most attention would have no branding at all, just like puppies and kittens, right? So you don't want the creative that captures the most attention. You don't want the audience that creates the most attention, because that's like old people. Also, fun fact, drunk people take 33% longer to read and remember half as much. So, and while they might be like in market and buying things like buying fast food or something, like probably not the audience you want all of your campaigns to skew towards. So that was the second wave of attention. A lot of learnings there. The third wave, at the same time as we were working on Parsec, there's a lot of researchers in the eye tracking space, and they became focused on this thing called like attention time, or ACPM. This had the same downsides that we found at Parsec, which is like, yeah, it's a good measure, like, and you can use it to understand historically how your campaigns have performed. But if you optimize to maximize the duration of attention, be it through a full screen ad format or through some sort of eye tracking setup, you're going to skew your audiences in a really bad way. And so the second and third waves or generations of attention metrics both fall victim to the same problem of not being good way to optimize campaigns. And that's, I think, the main way that at Adelaide, how we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the market is most of the rest of the market is stuck in this third wave. And you'll hear them talk about attention time, attention seconds, or ACPM. It works really well if you're looking historically, but it doesn't work as a currency, because no publisher in their right mind is going to take responsibility for something which is so heavily dependent on creative. And it doesn't work for if you're trying to optimize your campaign, because you have some rather unappealing unintended consequences on audience, which is skewing towards old people or intoxicated people. Also, people that are familiar with brands spend more time with those ads than people who are unfamiliar with brands, which is sort of the antithesis of advertising, right? You want to reach people and educate people about your brand that aren't familiar with it already. So that's the main way that we differentiate ourselves, is we have a more nuanced view of attention. Instead of thinking about the duration of attention, we think about the probability of attention by any person to any creative in a placement. So it's much closer to that credit rating stuff that I was talking about than counting the number of seconds that we think attention will be paid.
Very cool. It seems that obviously you guys have been doing this for a long time, and you've had time to find out what works and what doesn't. And I don't that those sorts of insights that you're bringing there, for example, like drunk people spend a lot longer with ads. I mean, when you say it, that makes complete sense. But obviously, when you first start optimizing towards metrics such as attention, you may not know that. And it may be, you just see maybe a time of day, and it's like people who are coming home on the tube, at 11 o'clock at night. Why is our attention so high? And I guess, is that how you sort of deduce that? How did you guys actually deduce that they were doing that? It was drunk people.
So we didn't have not deduced it's drunk people. That's just sort of an anecdote that I've seen in the research. Facebook, though, or Meta now, has put out a lot of research that shows that old people spend longer on ads in the feed than young people. We saw it actually when we ran the Nielsen DAR data up against the audiences that were spending the most attention to the Parsec ads. And like it was crystal clear. Like you could very clearly see that the age was correlated with the duration of attention. And it's funny. It's like there's this law called Goodhart's law, and Goodhart's law is that when you take a leading indicator and make it into a KPI, oftentimes it stops being useful as a leading indicator. So, like for example, like imagine your sales team. If you walked in and you looked at your dashboard for your sales team and it said the top 2 sellers were also sending the most emails. And you're like, oh, that's a great leading indicator. And so then you went out to your sales team and you said, all right, everybody, your new KPI is how many emails you can send in a day. Like it would immediately lead to a bunch of really crappy emails. And then you'd have a bunch of unintended consequences. You'd probably show up in a bunch of spam lists. And then also the number of emails sent would no longer be a good leading indicator of who's a high performing seller or not. So attention is the same thing. If you look back And a lot of the folks who are still stuck in this third generation of attention metrics, they have a lot of case studies like, oh, look, there's 300 campaigns that we've proven that the longer people pay attention, that they're more likely to remember the campaign. That's totally true. We saw the same stuff at Parsec, that campaigns that have historically generated more attention will perform better, but it doesn't make it a suitable optimization metric nor a suitable currency.
I've got you. Yeah, that certainly precludes it being, I guess, a trading currency, doesn't it? Those sorts of nuances. So obviously, you guys are at the forefront of ad tech, and just wondering how you guys are really driving innovation within the company right now.
So I think that the biggest innovation is one that's permitted by the fact that we've taken a more thoughtful approach to AU, which is the development of a currency, right? We have been working with media sellers to help them package up their inventory, to help them go to the market, and then finally to help them make guarantees. So they are, because the AU is a placement rating and not a measurement of an impression, it's a foreign concept to a lot of people in advertising that they can understand the quality of something before they buy it. Advertising is one of only 3 industries in the world where you'll spend £10 million and say, I wonder what I got. Let me look at the reporting. One of them is gambling and the other one is venture capital, right? Like in every other industry in the world, like you show up and you say, I'll take this many of that quality and I'll pay you this money. But in advertising, we're sort of like, oh, I wonder what I got. Let's look at the reporting. So we want to fix that. And we want to give people the ability, give buyers and sellers the ability to communicate about quality before they actually trade. And so if you can imagine, like if you're an advertiser and you've worked with Adelaide for a while, you'll start to figure out like what is your right AU score. And the AU score can vary based on what category you're in, what's your penetration like, how good is your creative, all these different factors. And at some point, an advertiser says like, okay, I really need a 27 AU on display and a 47 AU on CTV. And they'll know that's their AU number. They can go out to publishers and say, I don't want to pay for anything under 27 on the web. And the publisher can say, remember with viewability, like I don't want to pay for anything under 70% viewable. Well, they have to hope that they hit that viewability rating. With the AU score, if a publisher has done an audit, we literally tell them the AU score that corresponds to every placement they have. So then they can just serve the impressions into those placements and they will get the commensurate AU score. It's a foreign thing to people in advertising, but in every other market, this is the way people are trading. So we want to bring that efficiency and that certainty and that predictability to advertising. And I think that's the main area that we're innovating on. And I think it's super exciting because a lot of the problems in advertising come from this shared lack of a shared understanding of quality. And we think that we're fixing that.
Very cool, very cool. Just out of interest, it's probably a bit of a segue again. I mean, because obviously there's a few things that play into the attention metric. And one of those would be creative. How do you guys take out the impact of creative, right? Because I mean, obviously, you could have a placement where amazing ads are being served, and another placement where really poor ads are being served. Just out of interest, how do you guys normalize for that?
So we use the rules of large numbers. So we're measuring dozens and dozens of campaigns on a single placement, and we're able to sort of suss out where the noise is coming from. But then we're also using outcome data to train the algorithm. So it's not perfect. Like we strive to make AU a rating of placement quality, independent of audience and creative. And over time, I think we'll get there. But there's still noise that's introduced by all these other factors, and that we're working to isolate and remove from the algorithms.
I've got you. Okay, brilliant. And then in terms of AI, which is obviously a massive topic in ad tech in pretty much every industry now, how do you think AI is going to change the ad tech industry over the next few years?
So it's a good question. How is it going to change the industry? I think there's obviously lower funnel creative. I'm not a huge fan of upper funnel DCO. I think that a lot of the shared shared experiences that people have with brands come from having the same experience. But on lower funnel, the personalization of ad content via AI makes a ton of sense. Just making sure that you can have the optimal creative in front of somebody. I'm a little bit more skeptical on some of the agentic stuff that people are pushing around. And, maybe in some ways, a lot of the DSP algorithms were already AI. Like you have to think that DV360, like the algorithms inside of it were effectively using forms of artificial intelligence. I think that the biggest impact of AI on media is a second order effect that a lot of people are missing. And that is the video content that we consume will eventually be infinite, right? Like we'll be able to say, like, I want Monty Python doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and press a button. Not that I would ever, well, it's a bad example, but maybe it'd be funny, right?
I think it's a good concept, yeah.
It's just a scratch. And so I think that there will be unlimited video content. And when there's unlimited video content and everybody gets to see exactly what they want, people will start to make choices about where they consume content based on user experience. And that largely means how many ads there are, right? So you can imagine people will start to shift their attention and shift their time spent towards channels with fewer ads. This will decrease massively the supply of ads in the market, which will increase price. So I think that the long-term effect of AI, now there's a bunch of other sort of controlling effects, like where AI will be used to insert ads into video content, which is an interesting area. But I think the long-term macro impact of AI and digital media will be to compress supply as people have unlimited choice for content, and that will have some knock-on effects, like where the supply and demand curves meet, which will increase price.
Very interesting. So it's an increase in price rather than a decrease, as like you say, the proliferation, and therefore there's a huge supply of media. But you're expecting that actually people become more focused on areas where they're getting the best user experience, and therefore actually consuming fewer channels. Is that the
channels that have fewer ads?
Sure.
Like I think that like people will just sort of prefer those types of experiences. And the content will be more efficient, will cost less to produce, which will mean that there will be fewer ads required to break even. And also if those ads cost more, then you can, like, it sort of creates a positive feedback loop. Now, there's all sorts of different like countervailing forces, like the fact that more and more of the thing of if AI does all the hard work for us, then we're going to have more time to consume content, which means that maybe more of our time will be spent with advertising. Like if we don't have any more work to do and the AI is doing my laundry and doing the dishes and maybe doing my meetings for me, and I can just scroll on TikTok all day long, then I'll probably see some more ads. So maybe it all evens out. That sounds sort of dystopian, doesn't it?
It does a little bit. It sounds a bit Black Mirror. Yeah. Very cool. So how are you implementing AI actually in your business and then also for clients? And what sort of results are you seeing from that?
So we have, in a lot of ways, the machine learning that we're doing to build AU like has elements of AI in it. And we're definitely using like different AI tools to make AU more accurate. We're also using a lot of AI inside of the company. Like we have a few agents that help the sales team. We process all of our logs from all of our meetings into an LLM using, I think it's called like a RAG. And so that I can now go in. And so if you were, for example, to say, hey, Mark, tell me about all of the work that you've done with brand X, I could go in and type into our LLM and say, hey, what's going on with brand X? And then I would get a full readout of all of the meetings that we've had, and pretty soon also campaign performance. So that's one way we're using AI. And I think we're going to start to surface insights to clients in a similar way that are sort of like generated based on AI and suggestions about how they can optimize their campaigns. It's super exciting to see all the different use cases. I haven't written a lot, or until about a year ago, I hadn't written a line of code in 20 years. Like I used to do like Perl and CGI stuff way back in the day. But I actually wrote the app that did our holiday gifting program using Claude last year. It was really empowering. Like, it was really cool to get to play around and and then I used CloudFront to host the file and the worker, and like I built a web app. I mean, it looked like absolute garbage, but it functioned and it had like a back end, and like we were able to run our gifting program on it. I mean, our design team took over after I finished it and made it look good, but it's just like such an empowering experience for a product person to get to like have an idea and then to build it. And I think the last thing I'll say about AI is we've started to move our product team to like building prototypes instead of building specs. So they're able to just like mock up how something should look or build a working version, which takes the conversation a lot further forward, before it gets to engineering a lot of the time, which lets them sort of work out a lot of the nits that you'd normally have to wait to have a prototype for.
That's really interesting on product, actually. Yeah, because obviously I think what you said there, I mean, we discussed this a lot on the podcast in terms of like how far do we think AI can go. I mean, at the moment, obviously you've built that app you mentioned. You probably maybe got, I don't know, 67% of the way there, maybe. Just using AI and with only potentially a sort of small amount of coding knowledge. But you can foresee it where AI can get to a point where it's delivering 95%, and then you just need the final 5% done by the engineering team. So it probably enables you to iterate on products a lot quicker and improve the speed of that cycle and the development feedback, right?
Totally. And the nature of the conversation changes from like, oh, here's a spec that I wrote and some wireframes I made, to like, here, let's click through a demo I made. So I think it's super powerful.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. And then outside of AI, what are the trends you're seeing in the space that clients should be aware of?
I do have sort of a myopic view of media, and I think that everybody should be thinking about media quality. What other things are interesting? I don't know. Yeah, I don't have a good answer. I don't have a great answer.
I was going to say we should probably preclude media quality as well, since we've talked about that a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I just talk my own book all day. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's something that I think the interesting thing that nobody is talking about is this sort of quiet war between the SSPs and the DSPs. It seems like every SSP is building a buying platform and every DSP is building a direct path to publishers. So that's going to be super interesting to see it shake out over the next year or so, as the DSPs are looking for more sources of margin and more way to charge their customers less. And
who do you see winning?
Well, we have great partners on both sides of the market. So I don't really know that I would pick a winner yet, but I will say that in markets where there is too much supply, the buy side is advantaged. And in markets where there's constrained supply, the sell side is advantaged. And in digital advertising, there is unlimited supply, which is one of the problems we're trying to fix at Adelaide. But there is literally as many impressions as people want to buy that are available for sale. So that really bodes well for the buy side.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Obviously, there's infinite impressions, but are those impressions all the same in terms of quality? And that's where you guys are helping publishers, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like there's a false sense of no scarcity in the market, and that creates a lot of the weird incentives, right? Like when the market doesn't understand quality, it gets fixated on cost, and then you get all these cost-based incentives, which are definitely perverted.
Definitely. Okay. And then for your business in 2025 and beyond, what's coming up? What you guys got in the pipeline?
So we want to continue to expand globally. We're going to have a bigger footprint in EMEA in the coming 12 months. So I'm super excited about that. I'm really, really excited about our work with publishers, and we're going to start to be more deeply integrated into the systems that they use. And I'm really excited about the work that our team is doing to drive the adoption of AU as a currency. I think that it will have a lot of positive effects on the industry. It'll help publishers demonstrate the value they offer to the market. And almost as importantly, it will help buyers justify paying a premium for higher quality media, which then creates incentives for publishers to create more higher quality media. And it creates a positive feedback loop instead of the negative feedback loop that we're currently in.
Definitely. Yeah, I think any incentive to improve the quality of placements can only be good. Brilliant. So what we'll do is we'll finish with some quick fire questions. First of all, who's your favorite brand in the media / ad tech space, apart from obviously your business?
So my favorite brand for an ad tech vendor, I like Realize just because of like the double entendre of their name, which took I don't know if you've worked with Realize. They do creative measurement using attention data, and it took me like 6 months of working with them to realize that Real Eyes also meant realize. So I think they're one of my favorites.
I see what they did there. Very cool. Play on words.
Took me a while to get it.
Very good. And an individual in the space you'd like to give a shout out to, and why?
Oh boy, I think I'll say Jonah Goodhart. So Jonah is the founder at Moat. I don't know if and it doesn't matter for me to give Jonah a shout out, but like he was the founder of Moat. He's one of our earliest investors. And when we talk about like building on people's shoulders, Jonah was the. I think my fire alarm was going off. Jonah was the creator of the attention space, and we've really built a lot of what we're doing at Adelaide is built off of the work that he did at Moat, and he continues to be an amazing advocate and advisor.
Amazing. And last question before you get burned alive, what's the number one lesson you've learned since starting in the industry?
Think through the incentives that metrics make. Really be mindful and thoughtful about what you're doing and what the incentives it creates on other people.
Yeah, very good. And Mark, I'll leave you to it. So just so you can find out what that alarm's about. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me, Gareth.
Thanks, Mark.
See ya.